how to map out your social media content in a strategic way. I'm going to show you how I do it on Notion. If you love Asana or ClickUp, this would work just as well. And even Trello, as long as you're able to move content around in your software. Very briefly, what we're going to start with are national holidays, key industry events. We're going to look at time-sensitive promotions and campaigns that you might want to run. We're also then going to go into your anchor content and get those big content meaty pieces put in. This then allows you space to repurpose all of that down the road. Then we're going to look at adding in your evergreen content on top of that. And even though it's really structured, it still allows for reaction content and real-time marketing as well. So let's get started.
Content planning, when your planner is all filled out, your publishing calendar is all up and running, it looks great, it works really well, and you know what's happening when. But how do you get from an empty calendar to this point? How do you plan ahead? That's what I'm going to show you using a blank Notion page over here. So first of all, I'm going to use the option to copy link to calendar. What this does in Notion is it means I won't see any of these other bits. This comes from my content calendar template, but I don't need all these other bits. All I need is this. So we put that into our search bar. This now means that we have a never-ending rolling log of our calendar, which makes it really, really easy for us to do our planning. Now we are in November. So we're going to mock up how we would do that for going into Christmas because it's a really easy one to show you how to plan out strategically. So we're going to start with national holidays and key industry events. And you might be wondering, why start with those? You should be starting with your time-sensitive promotions and campaigns and things. However, national holidays and key industry events, they are date specific. They can't move. Christmas Day is always going to be the 25th. New Year's Eve is always going to be the 31st. And if you want content that either is posted for those events or avoids those events, you need to know where they are first, which is why we start with national holidays and key industry events. So first of all, we're going to skip ahead because I'm going to do the Christmas ones. So let's say we know we want a Christmas post. We can map that one out. On the template that I have with my calendars for myself, my clients, and for the template I use, I have lots and lots of data points. These have been developed over years of using it. You may have a completely different way of doing that, and that's absolutely fine. You can either fill them out now as you're going, working out your audience journey, the target audience, which pillars they go underneath. Equally, you can come back and do that later. It really is up to you. The one reason for doing it, first of all, might be that you want to rotate like your content pillars. So you might want to map these out ahead of time, but it is down to personal choice. For now, just to show you, I'm not going to put any of that information in just yet. So we know we want a Christmas post to go out. Let's say we also want a New Year post going out. So we've mapped those two. Let's say we also want to do something on the 29th of November for Black Friday. But this time we might want to say no content. So I always go with a warning symbol. And sometimes I have lots of warning symbols if I really want it to stand out so I don't forget. So when we're mapping out our content, we can now see posts we want to put in, also posts where we don't want to post here. Black Friday is going to be inundated. And in this example, we're going to avoid posting on that day just because we don't want our content to be lost. So those are like the national holidays, sort of Diwali, Christmas, Easter. And don't think just about when you want to post for those. You might need to think about where your audience might be. So let's say your ideal client are home for Christmas. This might be a really good time to post. Equally, if they are off social media more, you might decide not to post then. So you can work out when the national holidays fit with the strategy of your ideal audience. But you can go ahead, you can do sort of work ahead a quarter for all of these events because there's not going to be too many. Let's say you have on the 7th of December, let's just say there is an industry event and you know you're going to want to put a post together for this. You're probably going to do some live posting over this time, and that's absolutely fine. By doing your calendar this way, it leaves you space to do reactive content. And by putting this post in, it doesn't stop you doing anything in real time. It just means you know you've got an industry event post going out. Let's say the week before you want to do a prep post for the industry event. And you know you want to do yourself getting ready. What are you packing? Where are you going? Why is it important? But then you look and say, actually, I didn't want to post on Black Friday. This weekend's probably a no-go. Let's drag it to here. So now you can see that you're starting to spread things out so it works. Each content piece works in relation to the dates of the other pieces of content. Now, of course, you might find Mondays are a no-go for posting with you. Your audience are very rarely online compared to a Tuesday, and you may decide to move it. So you can move it to the Tuesday, for example. This is really good time to be doing that because you can drag and drop and move things around that you need. Once your industry events and your key dates are kind of locked in, then you need to move to your time sensitive promotions. This might be a launch. It might be that you are launching, let's say, the 11th. So let's say this is launch day content. So we know this is a fixed point for you. But now we can see that actually we have an industry event here. So you can work out where you're going to post for this compared to this immovable industry event. And you might have a post going here, a post going here, and a post going here. So you can go ahead and put those in. And then you might decide, actually, I don't want something right before here. I want a gap. So let's say we move this one to here. So now we can see we've got the launch content here, here, and here, and here, but it fits within the prep for the industry event that we need to do. So those are your time sensitive promotions. You can work out where it needs to fit with everything else. Once those are done, you're onto your campaigns. Now, this is it's not time sensitive. You could promote a particular offer at any time. Now's the time to fit it in. So we could look here and go, well, this is Christmas Day. We don't think our audience are buying in this time gap, so that's not a good time to launch. That's not a good time to do a campaign. This is busy, and we've got our launch here. This week, however, might be a really good week to do it. Now, for us, because we're here on the 12th, we might look ahead and think, actually, I don't want to campaign that soon. In which case, our next gap is going to be, let's say, in the new year, and we're going to put it in here. So we can say, we've got a campaign here. And as we did with the other launch content, we can then work out how we want this campaign to be structured. We might decide we want 5 posts on this campaign. So we can duplicate these markers by clicking on it, 3 dots, and duplicate. And let's say we want 5, and we can just duplicate however many we need. So because we've duplicated them, they're identical on the same day, but now we can drag and drop these to spread them out. So we know that, let's say we want this to be cart close here. We probably want one before. We might need a gap. And then this. So we've got a day on and a day off until the last 2 days. And let's say the week before, this is our warming up campaign. And we want one on the Monday and one on the Thursday. So that then spreads it out. Now, when you do this, take some time, use titles that make sense. So you can have cart close. And if you are using previous content, you can search the content, which I'll show you how to do very shortly. So you can reuse other bits of content for this, but just use your titles to really map out exactly which is cart close, what you're promoting, and have all the information on the cards. But now you can see that it fits in with the other posts and the launch. So we know we now have a launch in the middle of December, and then our next promotion comes in mid-January. And it's a really good way to get your sales cadence going, but you're covering everything that you need it to cover. Then we can move on to the evergreen content. Now, this is where you're cycling through your content pillars. You're talking about things that aren't really going to change for your audience. They need to know this content. It's relevant. It's important for them to know. And it doesn't really matter when you post about it. It's just important that you do this so that your audience know who you are, what you do, what your business is all about. Now, putting in the evergreen content, we know where it can go because we've already done our events and our industry holidays, our time sensitive promotions, the campaigns that we want. So when we start looking at our evergreen content, we really need to start with anchor content. And this is basically how I describe bigger pieces of content, which might be a blog post, a YouTube video, something that's going to take you longer to create, and you may need to be a bit more structured about how often you're able to put them in. It's quite easy to turn out standalone content to fill in the gaps, but you can't squeeze in filming a 30-minute YouTube video if this is part of what you offer. So we add that in much the same way that we've been doing with the other sections. We can look through and find our gaps and work out where we're able to put that content. So for example, we might say this is going to be our YouTube post. We know it's going to be quite heavy on what we do. I always use a little code, and I use square of a different color. So I know, my LinkedIn posts have a red square, my blog posts have a blue square. So we'll just use that one. So visually, it's really easy to see. I also, for other content, you can say what type of platform. So I can also put it in here, which just means at any point I can cycle through the tags and find exactly what I put out on to YouTube. But I know that if I've done YouTube here, I'm unlikely to want to do one the next week. So we duplicate. And obviously, like before, if you know the topics of these, you don't need to just duplicate with no information on. You can put the right information in as you go. But for argument's sake, let's say we're dragging that down to here. And then you would repeat that, whether it was your blog post, your email marketing, your LinkedIn newsletters, things that take you much longer to do. That's your anchor content. It's still cycling through your content pillars. It's still showing your audience what you're all about. It's still helpful. It can be entertaining. It just takes you longer to create. Once you've spread those through, so you've got a cadence that you can actually stick to filming, stick to writing, your other evergreen content can be put around that. And that may look like a standalone post here. A standalone post here, and let's move one over to here. Now, if you're going to work on YouTube, at some point you will be able to repurpose this. So later on down the line, when you are creating your next piece of evergreen content, you can add information on your card or in whichever system you're particularly using. So I can add a link for a blog or a YouTube link so that I can go back and repurpose those at a later date, but I know that they're in here. So I would use the same title. So you'd copy the title from here and then you'd put the title in here. So you know that at some point your anchor content is getting repurposed. And what that would look like. If you're not using place markers and your YouTube is already done, we can put the title. So this is our title. Imagine this has all the information on. It has the text, it has the video attached, it has the link to YouTube. You can then duplicate this. We know it's not necessarily going to YouTube, but let's say it's going to Instagram and LinkedIn this time. And we know that it's not going to be the actual YouTube. We can take off our little marker. Now we kept the same day just to make it easy, but now we know that we are able to repurpose this and we can drag and drop that to where we want to. So our anchor content sort of does what it says. It anchors your content into not only a cadence you can keep up with, but also the topics that you want to cycle through. And then when you've done that, you can go through and fill in the gaps with your evergreen content that may not need a big piece of work. It might be something a bit more incidental. It might be more light-hearted content, shorter pieces, it might be quotes. It's still relevant and it still needs to serve a social media goal, but it doesn't have to be tied to a particular time in the calendar, and it also doesn't have to be tied to when you're able to create it in the same way that a big YouTube video or a blog would be. It still leaves time for real-time posting. Just because you have all this mapped out doesn't mean things can't be added, and it can't mean things can be taken away. If you change your mind, you can just drag and drop and move things around. If something happens in the news that you need to change a post for, you can go ahead and change a post. And because we have an obvious scheduled option, so visually we can see if things are scheduled, we know if we just need to go to our scheduler and change a scheduled post. Having this structure really lets you react to things in real time because you have a social media safety net already done that you know serves you and your business in the way it needs to, so that you have the headspace to be able to post in real time about anything that is relevant to your audience or you at the time. So finally, this is all well and good. This is all brand new content that I'm mapping out. But what if I already have content I want to reuse or repurpose, or that I've written before last Christmas that I want to use this Christmas? On my calendar here, which is my working calendar, I have a content bank. And this is going to show me every piece of content that I have ever scheduled when I've done it through Notion. And it's just a very long list. But I can take any of this content and put that into the current month. So what we would do is, let's say we want to use some Christmas content from a previous year. I search Christmas. Anything that has Christmas in the title, the card title, will show up here. And I can just change the date on here to get it to fit in. So showing you on this more simplified version, we go to the content bank here. This shows everything we've just put in, spelling mistakes and all. But let's say we want Christmas. So we've typed Christmas in the title. So we have, this is the one that we've just put in. It was our Christmas post. But actually, I wrote 2 Christmas posts last Christmas, and I actually want to repeat them this year. You can still go onto the card and edit all the information. You can reword the post, you can add new graphics. But let's say you want to copy it over. So what we can do is we can delete the one that we had for the 25th, because we know we don't want that. And actually, I want to just reuse this one. So we can change the date on here. So let's say I'm going to change the date to the Christmas Day 2024. We also need to say that it is to create or to edit, because we know it's going to need some working. It can't be scheduled yet. If it had a previous tick that it had already been scheduled, then you need to unclick that. And you do the same process for all the other content that you want to rework and put into the new calendar month. So now when we go down, we have the Christmas post here, which is ready to edit, and just repeating the process. Let's say we still want some more Christmas content. This Christmas post for December the 12th, we're going to put that in. So it needs to be edited. Check that it's not scheduled. So let's put it in for the 12th a minute. So when we go back to our calendar and we find the 12th of December, we can see it's gone here. Now, actually, I don't want it the day after a launch. I want a few days of quieter posts so that I have time to talk to people, and, I might follow up some stories last minute, depending on my numbers. So I'm going to put this one here. So that way you can also put all of your reused and repurposed content in. And sometimes if it's a client, so for one client I've had for over 5 years, we have a lot of content that we pull from. So when we're doing launches, if they are launches we've done before, instead of putting little place markers in like these that I would then come in and end up writing, I go straight to the content bank and I reschedule all of the content for the launch we've already done, and that can work really, really well as well. So don't feel you have to do just place markers if you have lots of content already. And this is why Notion is fantastic for doing your content planning, because you can reuse everything. And I'm not saying you just have to copy and paste. You, of course, need to reread it, check it's relevant, edit the copy, update images, but you can reuse everything again. And if you have a launch sequence that worked really well one year and you want to repeat it, you can do it exactly how you did it before to rerun it the same way really, really easily if you follow the steps that we've gone through to map out the content planner. And that is why I think Notion is one of the best platforms to be able to do this on. So, just to summarize, we go through national holidays and key industry events. These dates are non changeable. They're fixed points in time that we need to work around. We then do any time sensitive promotions that we want to run. Then we follow with any campaigns that we want to run for particular offers that we'd like to share about. Then we do our evergreen content, and we finally do any real time content that we need to do so we can be reactionary and be present in our social media that we're creating. And of course, if you want to rerun and repurpose any of your former content, that's really, really easy to do as well by just not doing content markers like these, but by changing the dates on previous content and selecting them to edit.